Just would be part of a mediation effort. Let's take a look at the potential figures Chavez might be speaking to on the anti-government side. Former diplomats could feature, such as the former ambassador to the U.S., Ali Suleiman Al-Jali. Libya's UN representative Ibrahim Dabashi may also step forward. At the ministerial level, the former Justice Minister Mustafa Abdel-Jalil, who's been nominated leader of the opposition provisional government. Another potential is Abdel Fattah Yunus, a former general and interior minister. He resigned on February 22nd, calling for the army to join the uprising. But many of the protesters say they want a fresh face, not someone associated with the past regime. Now, that could mean one of the middle-class professionals involved in the uprising, perhaps one of the leaders of the 140 marginalized tribes, will be the answer. Or a military officer, perhaps, who's been backing the protesters. It's been done before by Gaddafi himself in 1969. Let's get an update now on the situation in Libya and speak to AlJazeera's Hoda Abdel Hamid, who joins us live from Benghazi. Hoda, let me get first your thoughts on this offer of mediation by the Venezuelans. Now, in Benghazi, there's an interim national political council that's taken charge there with 30 members headed by the former justice minister. How are they responding to this offer of mediation by Venezuela?
Well, we haven't heard yet a reaction from them, but that's because it happened overnight here and it's still quite early in the morning. But I do know that all along they have been saying that the only mediation they will consider is a mediation of how to find an exit strategy for Gaddafi and his family and all his close aides. They say this is no time anymore for dialogue. There is no way that they will do any kind of settlements that would make everybody happy. They say that there's a complete lack of trust at the moment, and if there's any kind of mediation just to find a sort of temporary solution, then they won't go for it because they say that they've known their government since more than 42 years and that government has always been against the people according to their views. So I think that a mediation, unless it talks about an exit strategy, will be quite difficult.
How to tell us more about the rebellion? Who exactly is leading this rebellion? Who's the political face, if you will, of this revolution? And can they be a credible partner that the international community can deal with at this stage?
Well, at the moment, the National Council is fronted by the former Justice Minister, as you said, Mustafa Abdel-Jalil. Now, he is a controversial figure because he did work for the regime. However, there seems to be sort of a pragmatic approach to all of this. The opposition here says that everybody is completely inexperienced because of the system put in place in the country. There are no institutions. People don't have any experience in civil administration, in the way the country is run. So at the moment they say that Mustafa Abdel-Jalil could be a good solution because he has a reputation of being an honest man. He has a reputation of being someone who more than once stood up to Gaddafi. He actually resigned 3 times in his career from that specific post, and that he could lead a transitional national council until Tripoli is liberated, and then they can move that national council to Tripoli. So, but on the other side, on the street level, on the fight level, it's by and large a leaderless kind of opposition. You were talking earlier about Brega. Well, I can tell you that since yesterday, I've seen many volunteers, hundreds of volunteers, who are basically taking a 5-minute lesson in how to handle a Kalashnikov and then heading up to the new front. So it is a very chaotic scene, and that could have repercussions in the long run.
Thank you very much, Hoda Abdel Hamid, reporting there live from Benghazi in eastern Libya. Well, the Arab League, meanwhile, says it could impose a no-fly zone over Libya if the fighting continues. The group's Secretary General says this action could be taken in coordination with the African Union.
We'll continue consultations on the best way to protect and guarantee the safety and security of the Libyan people and that of the Arab nations. We will not remain idle in light of the bloodshed that the Libyan people are facing, and therefore we may resort to a no-fly zone, and the Arab League and African Union are cooperating in this regard.
While the U.S. says all options are on the table, top officials have expressed caution over imposing a no-fly zone. Other nations have also had reservations. Russia and China, notably, have already suggested it wouldn't work. John Terrett has more.
Mr. Crenshaw is recognized.
Remarks from senior officials in the Obama administration reveal the challenges faced when dealing with Libya. Hours before heavy hitters gave testimony on Capitol Hill, the U.S. Senate unanimously approved a non-binding resolution that calls on the UN to impose a no-fly zone over Libya, a popular idea with many in Washington.
Well, I think that everyone is worried about what's happening and wants to put an end to it. No one wants to let this go on.
But with increasing concerns being voiced from UN and NATO members, administration officials are pointing out how difficult it would be to establish a no-fly zone over Libya.
And let's just call a spade a spade. A no-fly zone begins with an attack on Libya to destroy the air defenses. That's the way you do a no-fly zone.
Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said the administration's worried Libya could become a giant Somalia, and she drew parallels between a potential no-fly zone for Libya and circumstances in the Balkans 2 decades ago.
The difficulty of it, the maintenance of it, the appearance of it, and eventually it was determined that it was in the interests of the peace and stability of the region, etc.
At Wednesday's White House briefing, Libya was third on the agenda behind the shootings of U.S. service personnel in Germany and domestic budget issues.
The no-fly zone is an option that is being actively considered. It is, as are other options.
Even though the Arab League and the African Union are now talking about imposing a no-fly zone over Libya themselves, the international community remains divided on the effectiveness of such an approach. Nations like Russia, France and China, with veto-wielding powers in the Security Council, are fearful that a no-fly zone may lead to a protracted conflict, like the ones in Iraq and Afghanistan. In other words, while countries within NATO, the UN and the EU are keen to see Gaddafi's planes grounded to prevent attacks on civilians, they don't want to risk putting more foreign military boots on the ground in a region already perceived to have enough already. John Terrett, Al Jazeera, Washington.
The battle for Brega has been dominating online content. We'll be looking into that after the break.
The web desk, I'll have the latest video of the fighting. We'll hear from a young Libyan boy and an interview with what's claimed to be a captured soldier. All in just a moment.
And I'm Andrew Thomas in Christchurch, New Zealand, looking at whether this city, after its earthquake, can still host the Rugby World Cup.
As a slight chill spreads across Melbourne, we'll find a way to perk you up.
Hello, we've still got some very wintry weather to come across Japan. Northerly winds driving snow showers in across the Sea of Japan, and there really is piling up there across northern areas of Honshu into Hokkaido. So we're looking at something like 30 centimetres of snowfall over the last couple of days, with more to come. Temperatures in Tokyo at around 8 Celsius, a 5 degree there for Osaka. Somewhat sheltered by the mountains, but I think you can certainly expect to see a few flurries over the next day or so. It will gradually make its way through. Brighter skies coming back in. Temperatures creeping up into double figures. Fine and dry across the Korean Peninsula.